Hello, fellow tankers, and welcome to the third episode of Mediums Forever with me, your dumb white kid host, Mobius Y. Mediums Forever is a 5-episode series where I do an extensive review of each tank down the Russian Object 430 medium tank line, starting with the Tier 6 A43 all the way up to the Tier 10 Object 430. And here, in Episode 3, I'm covering the Tier 8 Object 416. An interesting little tank, dubbed the frying pan tank due to how it looks. It's definitely a funny looking tank, I'll tell you that much. Excuse me. So, a quick one-sentence synopsis on how I felt about the Object 416.
So nice! Mobius Y weighs 4 Ys out of 5 Ys!
So far, this whole line has just been stupid good. The A43 was ridiculous. The A44 was pretty awesome, too. And the Object 416 was also absolutely ridiculous. One of my first tanks where I earned a Mark of Excellence on it. So I am strongly considering rebuying this tank and permanently adding it to my garage sometime in the future. It was just that good. Strengths of this tank. It is very small. And hence why it's dubbed the frying pan tank. And because it is so small, it has an insanely good camouflage rating, especially for a medium tank. One of the best camouflage ratings in the game. If I remember correctly, I believe it has one of the top 3 camouflage ratings out of all the tanks in the game right now. Excuse me. Another positive quality about that, it is overall very mobile. It has great hull traverse, really good terrain resistances. The turret traverse isn't as good, but it's still pretty decent for a medium tank. And it has good acceleration and top speed due to a fairly powerful engine giving a good power to weight ratio. One more really good thing about the Object 416, it has really good damage per minute.
Target locked.
Shortened to DPM.
Gotta hurt.
It has the best DPM of all Tier 8 medium tanks, hands down, breaking well over 2,000 without the use of any equipment when it's fully upgraded. So, it's really nothing to scoff at whatsoever in terms of a tank. It naturally has some negative qualities, though. Its armor isn't that great. It has some decent turret armor, especially on the front. It will bounce some shots, but you know, as always, you're in a medium tank. Do not count on it. But you will get the odd bounce here and there off of your turret. The hull is quite weak, though, and the very front of the hull houses the entire engine deck, and it gets shot, damaged, and set on fire, or can get set on fire quite frequently if you do not mount something such as an automatic fire extinguisher or have the preventative maintenance crew perk, and it can be a serious issue for you. Another one of the negatives, it has that very off-putting 3 degrees of gun depression carried over from the A44, which honestly, if you're going down this line, you should expect that, as the A44, the Object 416, and the Object 430 Type 2, Variant 2, Version 2, all have a whopping 3 degrees of gun depression, some of the worst gun depression values in the game. And another thing about this tank, it has a rear-mounted turret, which can be off-putting to a lot of people. Lastly, the turret itself does not fully rotate all the way around, unlike with the A44. So, while this thing improves on several aspects of the A44, making it a really awesome Tier 8 medium tank, it has a couple quirks that still carry over from the A44, or just become flat-out worse. The very limited turret traverse can be really weird feeling and just be very off-putting for you common medium tank drivers such as myself. But I found it completely capable of compensating for it. You have to just change the way that you circle a tank in order to effectively get your shots off to your sides and damage it. That's essentially how that works. But due to this tank having really awesome mobility, pretty accurate punchy gun, really high DPM, and good mobility, great camo rating, so on and so forth, it can just fit any role that you need it to in a pinch, to be totally honest. But the only thing it can't really do very well is brawl with even-tiered tanks and trade shots with them. So this first game, showcasing here, I'm platooned with Naughty Coin, who was also grinding the Object 416. Most of my games in the Object 416 was platooned with my buddy Naughty Coin, as we are essentially grinding down this line together. And this first game, I was largely just flexing the tank, seeing what I can do with it. You saw earlier on, I was actually sniping at an IS-6 and damaging him very easily. Getting a lot of success from there, got a couple of early damaging hits in. Sniping at some TDs, and this time slugging it out with some fellow enemy medium tanks, a T-26E4 Freedom Super Pershing and a T-95 E2 Tier 8 American Premium tank. Be able to duke it out there, and by calling for backup from my buddy Naughty Coin, we were actually able to take down all those tanks with just the two of us. Unfortunately, I'm down to 33 hit points. So while I was pointing out the finer issues and problems with the Object 416, they're probably witnessing how you can properly flex this tank in both long-range engagements as well as in a short-range fight when you have to win your way out of a situation. This first game, I wasn't really sure how to play the tank. I knew it had a good camo rating and it was fairly mobile, as well as the limited turret traverse and really minimal gun depression. So I just flexed the tank, did a lot of moving around and flanking. Well, not really. Not really a lot of moving around. Just a couple circling moments, trying to flex the tank, see what it was capable of, essentially, as with most new tanks for me. You saw a couple crazy snapshots this game as well. My very first shot on that IS-6, didn't even aim, just auto-locked and fired and it punched right through his armor plating from a very long distance. And this tank is quite capable of doing that. And there's where I got wasted by a T-25 too. So this first game here, very impressive first game. It managed to get quite a significant amount of damage early in the game. Unfortunately, we were not able to secure the win this time around. So you can see there what I mean by Object 416 having good DPM and great mobility, but also it's still somewhat limited due to its inability to fully traverse the turret, as well as its limited gun depression. When circling a tank, they have to be either a little bit above you or pretty much on flat ground, otherwise you're going to have no hope in hell of hitting them. Essentially, that's how that goes. So hill fighting with this thing is just, don't even think about it. It's non-existent. With a rear-mounted turret and a whopping 3 degrees of gun depression, you're going to have no success trying to fight over hills against other tanks, especially other tanks with better gun depression, which is just about all of them in the game. Especially things like British and American tanks, and even some German tanks. They'll be able to out-trade shots with you if you're fighting on a hill with them. So you essentially want to stay to your strengths. A lot of the time, early on in the game, I did more of a hang back and snipe kind of approach for a while there, just to start softening up targets. And once the game started to progress a significant deal, and there were lots more softened up targets, and the game had really fleshed out, and a good third to half of the other team was dead, then I was able to really put the mobility to use and start cruising around the map and just vulturing on weaker targets. And it definitely helped having a partner to flank and shank with, also in an Object 416. Really nice way to play the tank. And platoon up in the tank as well. So, one thing I did not point out about the Object 416 is the final gun that I used on it, the 100mm M68. For some reason, it had a lot of its shots that would go low. And horizontally, they would be straight. They would be really straight. They would go almost right where I'm pointing, right up the middle. But they would dip low in the aiming reticule, and this is from any distance from 50 meters to 400 meters. The shot would just go low in the reticule, and I would wind up missing my shot, or shooting in the dirt, or just hitting a stronger piece of armor than where I'm aiming, and essentially do no damage. That was very prone to happen, and I don't know why. It's just something that I noticed. So, very good first game, 2448 damage dealt, still earning a little over 1,000 XP, even on a loss. Just a really good first game, doing twice the damage that the tank has HP without ever using this tank previously. Naughty Coin also doing 2266 damage, good game for him as well. So, in essence, the Object 416, just like with the A44, it'll feel quirky, it'll feel even more quirky than the A44. But it has better medium tank qualities than the A44. Good DPM, fairly fast-firing gun, fairly accurate gun, much better gun handling, great mobility, with a good acceleration value from a good horsepower-to-ton ratio. Just several qualities about it that make it feel more like a medium tank. Let's take a look at some of the packages now. Going back to the A44 to start with. Now, there's really nothing you can do in previous research to help out on your grind with the Object 416, because this 57mm Zis 4, the 107mm Zis 6, and the 76 S54, they don't get used at all on the Object 416 in terms of guns. Essentially, the first package is a turret and shred upgrade to help you with your mobility a bit, and this final package is the 100mm M63, which is a gun. It's rated a Tier 9 gun because it's borderline identical to the T-54's 100mm D10 T2C gun, which is the gun that I use on the T-54 all the time. Which is a large reason why this tank can be so dangerous, especially at Tier 8, because it is so mobile and has such a well-performing gun. So the Object 416, its engine only has 400 horsepower, but it still has a really good power to weight ratio, allowing it to accelerate quite well due to how small it is and how lightweight the tank is itself. And the 100mm M63 is, like I said, a very well-performing gun. It fires 7.5 rounds a minute, completely base, so pretty dang good rate of fire. It has penetration values of 201 for its standard AP and 330 for its heat rounds, and both those rounds do 320 damage. Those heat rounds are a major lifesaver when dealing with things like T28 prototypes, and especially when you face higher tier opponents like E75s. Those will help you get your shots and your damaging hits where you really need to make them count. High explosive rounds, average alpha of 420 and only 50 penetration. The aim time on this gun is 2.29, so an average aim time, and an average accuracy value of 0.37. Now the Object 416, like I said, is very mobile, 52 degrees a second hull traverse speed, and only about 40 on the turret traverse. So essentially that's how that goes with the Object 416's hard stats there. So like I said, very mobile tank, really solid performing gun. Let's take a look. I'm going to show you the equipment and supplies that I used on this tank by opening it up here. And I mostly just used a very basic medium tank setup, again focusing on getting my shots down range and getting them in quickly and accurately. I carried 7 heat rounds on this tank. As I said, they are a godsend, especially for T28 Protos and E75s. Only needed 3 high explosive rounds. I rarely shot them, to be totally honest. For consumables, I did a small repair kit. I didn't feel the need for a large repair kit just yet. Small first aid kit, again to heal an injured crew member, as crew members are prone to getting killed on this tank, and an automatic fire extinguisher to help put out engine fires instantly and reduce the chance of them happening in the first place. A really good piece of equipment to have on this tank. Equipment, very basic, coated optics, coated optics to increase my view range, medium caliber tank gun rammer to lower the reload speed on the tank itself, and of course a vertical stabilizer to reduce the dispersion values when moving or rotating the turret itself. Very basic medium setup here, guys. Nothing too fantastic. The optics work great combined with the camo value of this tank to help you outspot enemy tanks, as they will have a very tough time being able to spot you, especially if you have this tank painted with camouflage paint and the camouflage skill on your crew. The vertical stabilizer was really handy for me, helping maintain the accuracy on this tank and landing well-placed shots for damage on enemy tanks. Let's take a look at the 3D armor model using the ever-always useful tanks.gg. So right from the front, you can see very thick plating on the front of the turret, supposedly 110 millimeters on the very front of the turret there. You can see it being highlighted as I move the mouse. 75 millimeters on the sides of the turret and the upper front plate of the hull as well. And you've got 60 millimeters on the lower front plate and just inside the drive wheels on the tracks itself. Other areas on the tank, you have a whopping 45 millimeters on the sides of the hull and the back of the turret. And the top of the tank is only 20 millimeters thick, as it is very vulnerable to top shots and artillery. So essentially, at first look, it looks like the turret face is actually fairly strong, but a lot of it is pretty flat, especially around the gun. You get 122 millimeters effective armor right around the gun, and with the sloping of the turret, it starts to reach higher values immediately as you move away from around the gun mantlet, getting up to about 160 millimeters off to the side, 185 as you go closer off to the side, and near the top of the turret, getting crazy values, 232, 315 near the top of the turret. That is essentially your bounce zone on the turret, is the very top of it, and you're getting those armor values simply due to the shape of the turret itself. All sorts of weird armor values all over the face of the turret. The gun mantlet itself, fairly protective for the most part, getting really high values there. But again, it's mostly the top of the turret face that will be protective. As you can see, it's very squat and sloped near the top of the turret, so you'll get a lot more bounces off there than you will off the lower pieces of the turret and around the gun mantlet in particular. The hull itself, right beneath the turret, you've got a band of 31 millimeters in the top of the hull. Very easy to penetrate, especially when being shot down at. And the upper front plate itself, effective value, 128, 129 millimeters. That's where your engine sits, and it gets shot a lot, so expect your engine to get damaged frequently. Bottom of the hull, 100 millimeters, easy to damage. And as you're getting shot from above you, since most tanks are taller than you, you're seeing armor values looking more like this. The top of the hull, 27. 120 on the upper front plate. The top of the turret still fairly bouncy, but the turret face, you're getting only 118 millimeters, so you are very vulnerable to most tanks that you'll see. The sides of the turret, the plating is 75 millimeters thick with lots of sloping, so you're getting as low as 85 all the way up to 103 near the top, as well as 107 near the rear of the 75 millimeter plate, just due to the shape of the turret. Again, very weak in the sides of the hull, 62 millimeters above the upper plate, and 45 millimeters, a very flat 45 millimeters in the side of the hull, right above the treads. Very vulnerable to attack this thing from the sides. The hatch itself from the side, commander's hatch, only 106 millimeters, but it is a small target. The rear of the turret, you got a plate right in the middle of the rear of the turret at 48 millimeters thick, and around the outsides, you're getting about 124, but just outside, you're getting 75 to 84 millimeters, so very weak in the back of the turret overall, especially in the back of the hull, very weak as well. Very flat 45 millimeters of armor, except for the lower area that is sloped, giving you a value of 74 millimeters. But essentially, the very back of this tank is extremely vulnerable, especially in the hull area. If you wind up behind an Object 416, just shoot it in the hull, and don't let people get behind you if you're driving one. Again, the commander's hatch itself, about 126 in the middle, as low as 101 in some areas. But it's a very small target, so it's not going to get shot at too much. Going to the live cam, you can see here, flat on, you can see the Object 416. The top of the turret is much bigger bounce zone than the rest of the tank altogether. So let's choose, what am I looking for here? I'm looking for T-34-3 will do. So a low pen gun, for example, on a T-34-3, much bigger bounce zones on the sides and the top of the turret for a T-34-3 with a fairly low pen gun. But around the sides and such, and to the rear, you can see lots of green zones, very easy penetrations from just about every angle, even for a T-34-3. And the upper front plate does become harder to penetrate as the tank is below you, but that's not going to happen too often. Let's take a look at a Super Pershing, very low pen on the Super Pershing, only 175. The turret's still harder to penetrate from the front, but the rest of the tank altogether, pretty easy pens all around. You can see all the green zones as you move around the live cam. Now the top, like I mentioned, it's only 20 millimeters, especially in the turret. If this gets hit here by artillery, you're going to suffer crew damage, injured crew members. In the front of the hull, you will suffer some severe module damage there as well. Excuse me. So I'm trying to select the Object 416 back. I'm having difficulty finding it. We're going to go into the soft stats in just a second as soon as I find the Object 416 option. There it is. Going to go into the simple details of the Object 416's stats here, to compare things like DPM and so on and so forth. So, as you can see right away, the Object 416, compared to the A44 of the previous tier, the Object 416 has way higher DPM, especially for its tier, at 2502. You can see that on the left there. The A44 only gets just under 1800 base DPM without any equipment on. The Object 416 also gets better alpha damage per shot at 320, more penetration at 201 over 167, so that means a quicker reload speed at 7.67 seconds to reload, 7.5 rounds a minute on the Xbox Object 416, and a good aim time of 2.29, still better aim time than the A44. The overall accuracy also much better than the A44 at 0.37, as we saw in the garage there. And the view range just a tad better than the A44, 380, really amping that view range up with the coated optics. The health pool for the Object 416, not much better than the A44, only 100 hit points. And your maximum top speed is slower than the A44, but you still reverse just as quickly. However, you do have a higher power to weight ratio, allowing you to accelerate better, and 52 degrees per second hull traverse speed for better mobility. Now, as you can see here, the Object 416, it only rotates the turret 75 degrees to either side, but the whole way around it has your whole 3 degrees of gun depression all the way around. So this will feel really quirky at first due to the rear-mounted turret, very low gun depression, and not a fully rotating turret to begin with. But like I said, the massive DPM of this tank and the really good camo value can really help you make this gun sing for you from long ranges, and then use the mobility to get in close and finish off weaker tanks. The dispersion values when moving or traversing the tank and the turret, much better than on the A44, even after firing, allowing you to maintain more shots at a fairly accurate rating. And that's why I strongly recommend vertical stabilizers on this tank. The terrain resistances, again, they're quite good, just like the A44s were. And you have better turret traverse speed than the A44, as well as the A44 only had about, about 36 or so. So you can see here the DPM, over 2500 DPM on the Object 416 by itself. Now with just a gun rammer, you are getting values up to just under 2800. The base is 2502, but with just a gun rammer, you're amping that DPM up by about 280 points. So with just the gun rammer and Brothers in Arms, you've got 2843 DPM with just those two items. And that's how much DPM I could have put out with the Object 416. Now, if you really want to go all the way, you put on some extra combat rations and improve ventilation. And now you're doing over 3,000 DPM in a Tier 8 medium tank. That is the same amount of DPM that some Tier 10 mediums struggle to reach, even with all this equipment. The STB-1, the Object 430, those are two tanks that, right off the top of my head, can reach 3,000 DPM easily. But things like the E50 Ossifem or the FE4202, not so much. This thing just dumps out massive amounts of damage, especially if you're playing it the way you should be. Excuse me. And of course your terrain resistances do improve a little bit with the Brothers in Arms skill, which is quite nice as well. Pardon me here, I'm a little caught up. Anyway, so essentially that's the armor model and the soft stats on the Object 416. We're going to take a look at where the crew sits, as well as the modules in the Object 416 and how you can protect them from suffering damage from there. So the first picture that we're going to go to is this front view. As you can see, the entire front of the hull is all engine tech. That will get shot a lot. It will suffer damage pretty often, and it's very vulnerable, obviously, to catching fire. So make sure you bring either an automatic fire extinguisher or your crew has preventative maintenance on this tank. My crew did not have preventative maintenance. I still had other things that I was working on, such as clutch braking and so on and so forth, which might not be available until I get to the Object 430 version 2 at Tier 9. So a little bit from the left side here, you can see again in the hull, up at the front, very vulnerable and still all engine deck, and you can start to see where the crew is positioned in the turret. You've got your gunner on the left side of the turret, just outside the weak gun mantlet zone. And on the right side of that blue zone is where your driver sits in the right side of the turret. Bit of an odd spot for a driver, but that's the Object 416 is an odd tank in and of itself. Directly from the left of the Object 416, you can see your radio sitting at the very back of the turret. And again, the entire front of the hull, all engine deck, very vulnerable, very prone to suffering damage and forcing you to use your repair kit. The very back of the hull is where your ammo rack sits. And this isn't just with the Object 416. This carries up to the Object 430 Variant 2 as well, with an ammo rack in the very back of the hull, right by the rear drive wheel. So protect that as best as you can, especially the rear of the tank itself. If you recall, the very rear of the tank, a flat 45-degree angle. Don't let tanks get behind you and shoot you in the hull, as they will not only damage your ammo rack, but easily damage your health pool as well, essentially crippling your tank on a whole. You can see on the right side of the turret near the back there, another crew member sits, very likely the loader, just in behind where the driver is. But as always, you want to try and protect your crew as best as you can. So a little bit to the right from the rear here, you can see your driver in the front of the turret on the right-hand side, just inside the auto-bounce zone. So a side turret shot in that part of your turret will either injure your loader or your driver, and that can really cripple this tank, as the driver is essential to maintaining your mobility. And of course, as you can see, ammo rack all in the back there, and the engine deck with some fuel tanks up in the very front of the tank itself. So you want to try and protect yourself from suffering shots in those areas as best as you can. As you can see on the right side, still more ammo rack in the very back of the tank, and fuel tanks and engine deck on the very front of the hull as well. So for the most part, you want to be facing tanks that you are engaging at any range, not just because your turret's not going to turn all the way around to be able to shoot people behind you, but also because your tank is very vulnerable from the rear, with its weak armor, as well as a very large ammo rack in the very back of the hull, and a interestingly positioned loader in the back of the turret. So that can be a major issue. If you're playing this tank correctly, you'll find that it is much more consistent than the A44. I didn't have very many bad games in this tank, but they did happen. However, they were a lot more, like I said, a lot more inconsistent than with the A44. This grind was actually quite easy, especially with the fully upgraded Object 416. I didn't have issues with aim time or anything like that, but I was still capable of having bad games and all that jazz with this tank. As sometimes you just get YOLO'd by 4 top-tier enemy heavy tanks, and there's just nothing you can do about it. Things like that will happen, and you'll just get taken out really quickly. Maybe not early in the game, but really quickly. And a game like this is one that you want to avoid. A whopping 3 damaging shots for less than 900 damage, and I'm getting less than 700 XP for that game. Another easy way to have a bad game is to just forget where the hell you're driving and drive right off a cliff. This tank has no suspension, so any falling impact will severely cripple it. And even on a win, if you don't do very much damage, I still got 1200 XP for this game with a whopping 3 damaging shots, but it could have been so much more with higher damage. And again, 2 damaging shots on a loss, under 700 XP in a top-tier game. Although I did get a bit of an XP bonus for damaging a top-tier bat chat that game, it still wasn't very much. You'll find that this tank, like I said, it does perform more consistently than the A44, but you really have to play it to its strengths, know when to hang back and snipe for a while, and know when you can close in for the extra damage at close range as well as a quick kill. This second game here, happening on Pacific Island, excuse me. A very interesting game this time around. You'll likely see me do, if I remember right, I do a bit of side scraping in this tank as well. And the armor on this tank, the side armor on this tank is not really that good, like on the A44. So it doesn't side scrape as well as the A44, but it is still capable of doing it. This is a very tier 8 game. I'm still platooned with Naughty Coin, also in his Object 416. The other team, due to a fail platoon, also got a pair of tier 7s and a tier 6 Type 64 scout tank. So they did get the shorter end of the stick with the matchmaking here, but that's largely the fault of that platoon, that number 1 platoon on the other team there. So me and Naughty Coin, we weren't quite sure what we wanted to do here. We figured we'd go to the south end of the island and back up any heavies that come our way, and just start off by getting some long range shots on any enemies that approach us from over there, soften them up before they get too close, and possibly hold them at bay for the time being, as our combined DPM is over 5,000 total. So we really have a chance to get some really early damage and really soften up some targets to begin with before either they get dumb and close in on us, or before we get some backup allowing us to close in and finish off whatever we hurt. So moving in, I got detected really early, and I see it's the Type 64, so I turn to get a shot on him. A quick snapshot knocks him down to about half health. Naughty Coin tries to line up a shot, and he's able to damage him, allowing me to take him out really quickly. Very short game for that scout tank. I don't think he expected 2 of us to fly around the corner like that so quickly. But Pacific Island is one of my favorite maps, as the battle does carry out quite nicely here in this south area. So pulling forward, I see there's already an IS-3 that far forward, and he is spotting me. So he's either got a really good crew, or he has some interesting view range enhancing equipment on him. But he just keeps coming closer and closer, so I know that if I poke out to shoot him, I'm very likely going to get spotted. Surprisingly though, due to the really good camera rating on this tank, that doesn't happen, and I'm able to get a shot off. Unfortunately, it doesn't go where I need it to, bouncing off his upper hull. So the gun depression, you can see it kind of working me over there. Finally able to land a shot off after I back up a little bit more, getting myself off the tiny little incline in the sand there. You'll find that happens a lot with 3 degrees of gun depression. You really have to get used to it as quickly and as best as you can in the A44. Otherwise, it'll just frustrate you and you will not enjoy this line very much, as there's 3 tanks in a row that have 3 degrees of gun depression. Looking at the map here, I see the north. The north side is doing its job quite well. We're all stacked up on this rock here. It's pretty crowded, so I say, okay, I'm going to push forward. And once I see this friendly T95E2 push forward as well, I say, okay, Naughty, I'm going to move up here and get behind this IS-3, because the IS-3 is pretty much alone. And Naughty Coin decides to follow me as well. I know there's a T-28 Proto somewhere back there, but he's not poking out because he is remaining unspotted. Gun depression almost screws me over there again, but I'm still able to land my shot right in the rear of the IS-3's turret, the only real vulnerable point of the IS-3's turret. And both me and Naughty Coin are able to poke over for one more shot into the back of the IS-3's hull, able to take him out of the game. Luckily, the T-28 Proto was not looking at us, otherwise he would have had an easy shot into the sides of our hulls, since we had to peek so far over the ridge just to get a shot off. T-26A4 on the far left is super pershing. I decided we're going to ignore him because this T-28 Proto is far more dangerous, especially since he's a lot closer. 28 Proto trying to track Naughty Coin, forgets all about me, and he's just in a terrible situation that he can't get himself out of, so we're able to finish him off quite quickly. Now you can see here that I've already fired 8 rounds. I'm down to 17 AP shots. That can be an issue in a longer game. You can be running out of ammo here, but that's part of the reason I carry 7 heat rounds as opposed to just 3 or 5. I want to be able to whip them out in those clutch situations, either when I have no more AP rounds, which actually never happened, thankfully, or when I really need to make my shots count, like I said, on a T-28 prototype or an E-75, or even an E-100 or a T-110E5 Tier 10 heavy tank. So pulling over, I'm able to come up behind the super Pershing here. Unfortunately, he takes out a teammate. I figured my teammates would be able to handle him, but I was very mistaken. He gets one more shot into somebody. Naughty Coin drops him down to 1 shot, and I'm able to put one more shot into him, take him out of the game. And that's when the AMX 5100 starts clipping me. So I start moving my tank erratically, trying to either make him duff his shots or just get a really troll bounce on me, which he does for 1 shot, thankfully, because that could have very easily ended my game right then and there. So seeing him back off and not firing at me anymore, I know he's reloading, and I need to take him out quickly before he can finish his reload. If I don't do it quickly enough, All he needs is one well-placed shot, and I'm out of the game. But he's still reloading, so I can just whip up behind him. My first shot gets right into his backside. He still doesn't see me. But my second shot goes way high as I hit a bump, and the 3 degrees of gun depression makes me completely miss. One more shot into his backside, dropping him down to 1 shot. He's still not paying attention to me, but there's really nothing he can do about it, as Coin swoops in to finish him off before he can turn around and get shots off on us. 6 enemy tanks left, and most of them are still their tier 8s. Excuse me. And they should still have a KV-4 left over there in the back with the other heavy tank left on their team. And there is a super Pershing somewhere over there as well. As I cruise over, I notice the heavily damaged Panzer Soufflé, so I move to get a shot on him, but the SU-101 beats me to it. And with Coin going to the eastern side and trying to get up right in the enemy tank's faces, I decide I'm going to flank around. I'm a lot weaker. Coin has a lot more health than I do, so he can start brawling it out with them much better than I can. So, as Coin's getting badly rushed by 3 of their remaining tanks, me and a T-95E2 push around to try and get behind him, trying to get some more damaging shots in here to help finish off this game. A very, very healthy Jagdtiger 88 and STA-1. I decided to pick on the STA-1, getting 1 shot into him right before the Jagdtiger 88 takes me out of the game as well. So, not much we can do to help with finishing off the rest of the game. We just hope that we did enough damage, which we did, thankfully, and our team was able to close it out. This game, 2705 XP earned with 3249 damage dealt. Coin, not as good of a game, only 1159 damage dealt for him. But still a very good game, helping me along this grind really easily. Only completing 1 XP op, but still, 2705 XP. Excuse me, that's nothing to complain about. So, this third game here, to showcase on Prokhorovka, due to the low gun depression of the Object 416, you might be thinking, well, I'm not going to go into the middle like I would with a medium tank in the A2 to A6 area and spotting over that central berm because I can't shoot anything over there with my crappy gun depression. Well, that is just not true. You can still be useful in the center area of the map in something like the Object 416 where you can't even get a shot off at the things that you're going to spot over that central berm. However, it does also help when the red team is being really stupid. This game wound up being a really ridiculous game in terms of damage dealt and assisted damage, largely due to the fact that the enemy team in this game totally camped. You'll not see any of them push up beyond about the C line there. A lot of them go to that back island in the top right, and a lot of them just camp the very back near their base and in the very top left corner of the map. Essentially, this game will showcase how not to play Prokhorovka as a team, as there's just so much camping going on that their team is completely incapable of doing anything against us useful because we are simply outmaneuvering and outspotting them. So right off the bat, as always, cruising up to the middle. Gonna peek over the little berm in the center of the map here, see if I can get any initial spots. And by only spotting a few tanks, this got me thinking, okay, they can't have very many people moving up if I'm only seeing 3 of them. Usually that's what that means, and that's how I interpret it. And naturally my instincts were correct this time around as well. So this game I'm also platooned with Niles Y93, Joe the Frogman, and Coin again, and one other, as we do have a 5-man platoon, Mistaken ID. So we have a pretty well-rounded platoon going on in this game, with each and every single one of us in a different class of tank. Naturally, myself being in the medium in the Object 416. So right off the bat, enemy scout tank gets taken out, so we have essentially removed their eyes from the map really early. Right now I'm just trying to reposition to see if I can get a shot on this M6, as he is very, very close to us, and I don't want him spotting the rest of our team for their artillery as well as their TDs camping at the back. But we're completely unable to see any of them, as, like I said, they are just camping so hard that none of them are moving up. Pulling forward, I do spot this VK3001 prototype, figuring I can't really move much closer. I'm really exposing myself by pulling forward like this just to get a shot on him, but not only is nothing spotting me, I'm not seeing anything in a decent position to support this VK3001P. So, unfortunately for him, due to his team's really poor play of Prokhorovka, he is just absolutely butt-fucked. Blind shot, not sure if that went anywhere near him. Figured I'd try anyways, but in further not seeing any tanks being spotted anywhere, I decided I need to move up, as it is time to spot out where all these campers are. Immediately lighting up 3 tanks hanging out back on the railroad tracks, including a Tiger II and an AT-7, but also a Borsig in the back there, and a T-28 Proto right near their base. So I just hang back, I start getting shots on these tanks to try and take them out as quickly as possible. The Borsig was priority number 1, but the AT-8 was knocked down to 1 shot, so I finished him off really quickly. And the Borsig still aiming at me, barely misses his shot, bouncing off the top of my turret, so I'm able to finish him off very easily. T-28 Proto, still in the very back of the map there, hoping that Mistaken ID lands her artillery shot on this 28 Proto to either severely weaken him or finish him off. I try for a shot into the side of his turret, but naturally it bounces off. And that's when I start loading some heat rounds. The front armor of the T-28 Proto is formidable enough to deflect your Object 416's AP rounds, so I almost automatically switched to heat whenever I saw a T-28 Proto facing me from that point onwards. Seeing a medium tank come all the way out to the middle, it's a T-95E2. He's half dead, I'm full health, so I just charge right in after him and start doing the oddball Object 416 Circle of Death. As you can see here, circling, you can't fully turn your hull 90 degrees to what you're shooting at because the turret doesn't fully turn all the way around. You kind of have to go towards them at an angle so that you can maintain your turret on target and get easy side shots into them. Pulling forward, spotting a camping IS-3 and another camping T-34 as well as the artillery. There was another heavy tank, but he got taken out already, it looks like. Firing a blind shot at the T-34, not sure if I hit him. Enemy Tiger II gets spotted by the railroad tracks as well. So that marks where all 3 of their top-tier heavy tanks are sitting. And this is why this team got absolutely butt-fucked, because their 3 top-tier heavy tanks did nothing. They went to the back of the back sides of the map, where they were essentially useless, and did not support the rest of their team, the few teammates that were actually trying to move up and get spots on our team for them. So, second lesson learned here, folks, on top of effectively playing the Object 416 on Prokhorovka, how not to play Prokhorovka as a team, especially in a group of top-tier heavy tanks. So I know this IS-3 is over here alone. I'm going to try and move in on him and take him out. I start loading up some heat rounds just in case, but I figure I'll just get the assisted damage, let other people finish him off, since he is side onto them. Now closing in, I keep my heat rounds active here, as I fully expect to come across the front of the Tiger II. So I figure I just want to punch a hole right through his front plates. I'm going to fly over the railroad tracks, get one more shot off, and put a hole in his upper front plate. United Combat and the VK-45 Alpha up on the hill gets taken out finally, as he was brawling for an extensive length of time up there. But he did a really good job putting out some damage this game. One shot right through the front of the Tiger II. He's trying to track me, but he just can't quite do it. And I'm able to circle in right behind him, putting one more shot into the rear of, the side of his tank, right into his ammo rack, severely hindering his ability to put a damaging shot back on me now. And with 2 more hits from teammates, I'm able to finish him off. And the TD back out by the hill gets taken out, resulting in a really easy win for our team. So, like I said, folks, that's how not to play Prokhorovka with a severely campy team play going on that game. 37-38 total damage dealt, 48-97 assisted damage, landing a scout medal, a sniper medal, a patrol duty, and a high caliber with an ace tanker mastery badge all in one game. Absolutely ridiculous game in the Object 416. Also raking in 213,000 silver, which is quite difficult to do in a non-premium tank, I must say. So shooting a few heat rounds that game really did not hinder my silver making ability, as I was able to just dump shots on people, get a lot of spotting damage, and rake in a massive amount of silver. Good job by my platoon as well. Mistaken ID, Niles Y93, Joe the Frogman, and United Combat. Also putting out pretty good numbers, and just a really good team play game there in total. Excuse me. So, the Object 416, you might think it can't, instead of playing it more as a kind of campy, snipey sort of tank to overcompensate for the low gun depression, you want to make sure you're still playing in the middle area over that central berm, getting your spots on any enemies pushing up in that middle area, get your spots in, and once you thin out the crowd that actually pushed up to face you on that center berm, you can move right in and outspot enemy tanks very easily due to your extremely high camo rating and hopefully your superior view range with something like coated optics. This is the very last game I played in the Object 416 on Himmelsdorf, and this game I wound up being solo. I believe I already had the Object 430 Variant 2 researched at this point, and I was just overtraining the crew a little bit in order for my crew to be 100% trained when I put them in the Tier 9 tank. So this was my final game in the Object 416. I believe this was game number 85, and it wound up being a stupidly good game. I could not believe the results of this game here for my final game in the Object 416. Once again, winding up top tier. Always a bonus in the Object 416, although it is a very capable tank even when bottom tier, especially if you're not afraid to sling a few heat rounds. But seeing that I was top tier one last time, I said, okay, well, this'll be my 85th game. I'm gonna finish off overtraining the crew, and then I'm gonna purchase the Object 430 Variant 2 and move the crew in. So right off the bat, I turn my ass towards Ganondorf's castle, as the top of the hill is where I feel like going, because I figure if I get it on the very eastern side of the map there, I can overcome my poor gun depression and shoot down the cobblestones to the very top of the hill where the enemy tanks come over to greet us and engage in battle with us. So right away pushing up there, I see I'm going to be the first person up here, and I'm probably one of the few that's going to be up here. There is a group of 4 coming up on the other street to support me up by the castle, but I'm going to be up top there long before any of them are even in a position to support me. So I know that if I come across multiple tanks, I'm going to have to pull back and wait for my support to arrive for them to soak up shots from me. But for now, I'm just focused on trying to get to the top of the hill before the enemy team does, get some early spots in, hopefully some early damage. But in seeing the tree on my left get knocked over, I knew there was a tank there as soon as I saw that. So when the ALC got spotted, I was not the least bit surprised. So at this point, I'm just trying to chase him down. But a T-23 was able to beat me up to the top of the hill as well. Now, I have a T-23 myself, so I know he's not very well armored, but he has a very, very fast-firing gun. So I essentially don't really want to trade shots with him, as he could very likely out-DPM me if he plants his shots well enough. So at this point, we're just playing a little bit of peekaboo here, and that's when I spot a Chi-Ri right behind the T-23. Chi-Ri puts 2 shots into me, and I bounce both of them off the top of my turret, so I'm able to respond in kind on the Chi-Ri, getting my first damaging shot of the game. T-23 is still trying to maneuver on me and get a position on me, but I want to focus on the Chi-Ri first, try and take out the Chi-Ri first, but the T-23 winds up being the target of opportunity this time. ELC trying to get away, but that's not happening. Nice tracking shot near the front of his drive wheels, and he does not repair it quickly enough, allowing me to finish him off. So that is a very annoying ELC AMX taken down right away. Chi-Ri just fired all 3 shots, so I know now it's my time to go and finish off his T-23 once and for all. Once the T-23 is out of the way, we can focus fire on the Chi-Ri and take him out very quickly. Friendly that went around the castle took out the T-23 for me. Big help there, and my final shot was right into the Chi-Ri, taking the Chi-Ri out immediately. Clean sweep of the top of the hill. Pretty sure we didn't lose any tanks there. Coming down around, I load a heat round knowing that there's a T-28 Proto at the bottom of the hill. First shot just punches right through him for full damage, allowing friendlies to finish him off in another 2 well-placed shots. Coming around, I see there's an STA-1 and a Tiger 2 back by their base. STA-1 takes a shot at me, but I just barely dodge it. So I figured we're going to try a little flank and shank here. See if I can get behind this Tiger 2, as the STA-1 appears to have completely backed off in a very unsupported position for the Tiger 2. I still get one shot off on the STA-1, but he completely abandons his teammate into the Tiger 2, and allowing us to finish him off very quickly. Excuse me. The STA-1 did give me one parting shot into my hull before completely taking off. And this is where I decide we're not going to cap the flag. I'm going to keep going. They're back at our base, essentially. I want to get some more damage in. So I start hustling back towards our base as there's what looks like 3 heavy tanks closing in on our base, while we have an ISU-152 and a T-28 Proto to defend it. Enemy STA-1 gets taken out pretty quickly, and around this corner I see there's an enemy IS-3. So I partner up with this Pershing and decide we're going to wolfpack this IS-3 together. Trying to get around this dead Borsig so I can get a shot on the IS-3. Well-placed shot right through the upper plate of the IS-3 into his ammo rack, really crippling the IS-3 there. Pulling up alongside IS-3, one more shot into him. Pershing drops him down to a 1-shot. So with the IS-3 trying to track the Pershing, still I get one more shot into the rear hull of the IS-3, finishing him off and taking him out of the game. A very big high roll on that shot in the IS-3 for 334, but I wasn't complaining one bit. So in seeing that there's 3 enemies on our base, I don't want us to get a draw, as is very possible if I don't get a damaging shot, so I load a heat round. And the first target is the T-29. I only tracked him, but damaging the tracks is enough. Tiger 2 takes out my loader. I instantly heal him, shooting another heat round into the front of the T-29 for damage, and resetting the cap for our cappers to win the game for us. A very unnecessary cap win, to be totally honest, especially once I knocked their timer down by tracking that T-29. But what can you do? Sometimes that's just what happens. Another ace tanker that game. As you can see, I had a mark of excellence on this tank by then. Also got a nice sniper medal. 3206 total damage dealt. Crazy game. Crazy last game in the Object 416, especially on a city map, which is a kind of a map where an Object 416 might be at a bit of a disadvantage unless you really use your head and utilize large buildings and city streets to your advantage to break line of sight and get some easy flanking maneuvers in. So, those were some games in the Object 416. Like I said, folks, this was a really fun tank to play. It is definitely very quirky, like the A44, with limited gun traverse, 3 degrees of gun depression, and a rear-mounted turret. But it is very mobile. The gun dumps out massive amounts of damage when you need it to. It's a pretty accurate, punchy gun as well. And this tank was just all in all a major blast to play. So that about sums it up for episode 3 of Mediums Forever. I hope you enjoyed yourself. I hope you guys learned something about the Object 416 in this episode. And I'll see you guys next time for episode 4 with the Object 430 Type 2. This is Mobius Wise signing off. You guys have a wonderful night.